Let's kick it off by celebrating. So happy Ron DeSantis campaign suspension day. It was a long time coming. I still don't know why he decided to launch a campaign, but DeSantis launched his campaign on X, aka Twitter, in a conversation with Elon Musk. You know, the space kept crashing, and it made it impossible for DeSantis to communicate to anyone who was listening. So that's how he kicked off his announcement when he was going to run. So that already set the tone. Thank you so much, Westward Son. That already set the pace for what we were to expect from the DeSantis campaign. In the weeks and months that followed the campaign kickoff, DeSantis struggled to connect with voters on a personal level. Bear with me one second. My computer's doing something funny. Yeah, so he could not connect with the voters out in New Hampshire. He couldn't connect with them in Iowa, and we saw that he was really struggling. He pissed off New Hampshire voters because when his campaign would visit in New Hampshire, like when he first kicked off his campaign, he did not want to take questions from voters, which is something that's traditional in the state. Not to mention that he was always caught on camera being super uncomfortable when he was engaging with voters. He just couldn't do it. He just didn't have that secret sauce in order to appeal to folks. So he just didn't have it, and you could see that he was lost in the lights. So Noki Doke says 8 minutes, 8 minutes. Let's get to 10K in 8 minutes. Beautiful. That would be awesome. We're already up to almost 7K likes. Thank you so much, guys. I do appreciate it. This will help us get us on people's FYP. And you know, the whole point of this is to help folks understand what's happening, because I know a lot of folks aren't as obsessed with politics as I am. It's really like unhealthy because there's a lot of ups and downs here. But anyway, so thank you so much for liking the live. I do appreciate it. So going back to Ron DeSantis. So he pissed off New Hampshire Republicans when he kicked off his campaign because he didn't want to take questions from them. And then by the end of July, let's not forget that he laid off 1/3 of his campaign payroll, and the cuts came shortly after the public filings showed that his campaign was burning cash at a high rate of speed. And it was right around that time that Ron DeSantis defended Florida's curriculum for students, and he said, and I quote, "Slaves develop skills which, in some instances, could be applied for their personal benefit." And that was just like 2 weeks worth of horrible news. So again, horrible person. But as it turns out, Nikki Haley was right all along. She said that it was going to be a two-person race after she came in third in the Iowa caucus, and that's exactly what it turned into. When Nikki Haley originally said that, everyone was like, "What the hell is she talking about? How is it a two-person race?" And again, I'm no Nikki Haley fan, but a lot of folks were coming down on her, saying, "How is it a two-person race when Ron DeSantis came in second?" Anyway, turns out Ron DeSantis suspends his campaign today, and now it is a two-person race. It's Nikki Haley versus Trump. Ron DeSantis was such a little B that what he did was he endorsed Trump immediately, which is so silly, right? Like you were telling us all this stuff about Trump during the campaign. You never really landed a punch, but instead of withholding your support and just say, "Well, you know, I'm going to see how it plays out between these two candidates. I'm going to withhold my endorsement." What he did was he endorsed Trump immediately, like a little bee. He kissed the ring, and then he also threw a parting shot at Nikki Haley, basically calling her a corporatist. And it's just like, all right, whatever. Ron DeSantis's endorsement is not going to move the needle one way or the other. So his endorsement really doesn't matter, right? What got me was the fact that, hey, you're in this race to be the winner of this contest, and you really didn't do anything besides attack the person who came in third place in the Iowa caucus and everyone that fell below second place. That's really what you were doing. You were never really doing anything about Donald Trump or addressing him in any substantive way, in any kind of way that really struck a contrast. All you kept basically saying was like, "Hey, I'm store brand Trump, you know, and he is name brand, but you know, he's not that great. I'm actually greater than he is." It was probably one of the stupidest campaigns I've ever seen. But you know, that's exactly how he ran it. Now, I've always said that I don't think, or actually I know that Trump is not under any threat to have the nomination taken from him. We know that. We know that he's going to be the nominee. I've said in many lives, if you are just joining me for the first time, I've said it in other lives, I promise you, that I had endorsed him to be the Republican nominee, and not just in 2024, but in 2028, in 2032, in 36, in 40, in 44. You name the presidential election year, I want Donald Trump to be the nominee of the party, because. And even if MAGA has to have a seance to summon his spirit to be the nominee, I hope they do that, because he is not only is he a career ender for other Republicans, but he's also ruining the party. And I would love nothing more than that party to be absolutely gone. But I digress. I really want Nikki Haley to stay in the race. And not because, again, I think she's a real threat to Donald Trump or anything like that, because I want her presence there as long as possible. And here's why. She inadvertently helped expose Trump's mental state. Now, all of us who are on this side, actually, let me address Shibi, what Shibi's saying right now. He is trying to be vice president. He may be trying to be vice president, but it is an exercise in futility, because Donald Trump does not need Ron DeSantis' help to win Florida. Trump won Florida easily. So the idea that DeSantis could somehow benefit Donald Trump, it's not going to happen. So I don't think that DeSantis is, and I think Trump really just doesn't like DeSantis on a personal level. So I don't think there's any threat of DeSantis ever being selected as vice president, or even considered as vice president. And I think if Ron DeSantis had gone a little longer, I'm so confident that Donald Trump would have trounced him in his own state, just like he's going to trounce Nikki Haley in South Carolina. Same thing would have happened in Florida, because there are just way too many MAGA voters out there for any other candidate in the Republican space to have any breathing room. It's just not possible. But we're up to 15K likes. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. Please keep tapping the screen. Again, this helps us just get on the FYP. I know we have 55, 56 folks in here right now, but hopefully we can get a little higher, because again, this was huge news. So like I was saying, Nikki Haley, I want her to continue staying in the race, because one of the other reasons I want her to stay in is because it kind of gives us some insight into how much anti-Trump support there is. Not that it's really beneficial for us, but I'm just curious to see it. I just want to see what slice of folks really are not trying to roll with Trump. Because remember, in the Iowa caucus, it was about 44%, right around there. It was 44, 45% of Iowa caucus goers who did not vote for Donald Trump. That's a pretty big number. And while, he got 50%, or was it 50% of the caucus vote, that is a commanding lead. It's not the strongest type of commanding lead, especially when you have two incumbents that are going to be facing each other, right? It's not like it's the Republican incumbent versus an open Democratic field. That's not what it is. We're already familiar with Joe Biden. We've seen what Joe Biden's done. We have opinions of Joe Biden, hopefully all favorable. But that's another reason why I want Nikki Haley to stay in, because again, she exposed that whole Nancy Pelosi moment when Donald Trump said Nancy Pelosi's name, Nikki Haley's name, 3 or 4 times when he meant to say Nancy Pelosi, and Nikki Haley jumped on that. So if Nikki Haley's going to go ahead and draw contrasts, aka attack Donald Trump during the primary, I'm all for that. Anyone that is going after Trump, especially if it's on the same side, is just going to have a lot more credibility to Republican voters. And I'm not talking about MAGA folks. I'm talking about Republican voters who are not really satisfied with the state of affairs with respect to how their primary is going, and Donald Trump being, the eventual nominee. And not to mention so on the flip side of that, one of the reasons I do want Donald Trump to pivot to from a primary candidate to a general election candidate is so he can go ahead and waste money. Because again, reminder, he is facing a shit ton of legal fees. And let's take a step back. When you go to his website, again, it clearly says, when you scroll all the way down, when you donate, it says that a portion of the donations are going to another PAC. That PAC happens to be flipping his legal bills. So he definitely does not want to waste all these donations on running ads or running for campaign expenses. He definitely wants to have some of this money so he can pay his legal fees because they are definitely plenty. And one of the last things I wanted to talk about, let's see, hold on, is Tiff in here yet? Tiff, are you here? Sorry, I was just going off and off and off and off. Do I see Tiff? I don't see Tiff in here. No convictions, Biden 2024. It's all about Trump. Hustle and muscle. It's all about Trump because we're talking about DeSantis suspending his campaign and Trump is going to be the nominee. So, with respect to what's happening in the Republican primary, of course, it's all about Trump because he's going to be your guys' nominee. So, yeah. But what I wanted to talk about was the New Hampshire primary poll that came out on CNN. It shows that Trump is holding a 50% lead. I'm sorry, he's holding 50% of likely New Hampshire primary voters, while Haley is at 32% and DeSantis is polling at 6%. The DeSantis internals must have shown the same thing because this polling took place between January 16th and January 19th, which is way before we even got a whiff that DeSantis was going to be pulling out. So yeah, not great news for DeSantis. So we'll see if Haley picks up that 32%. DeSantis polling at 6%, not great because you need 10% in the New Hampshire Republican primary in order to get some delegates. If you come under 10%, you get 0. So yeah, not good news for DeSantis. I'm sure his internal polling showed the exact same thing, and that's why he decided to pull the plug on his campaign before he got further embarrassed in the New Hampshire primary. And by the way, this poll also showed that Joe Biden is trouncing Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson via Joe Biden's write-in campaign. 63% of likely primary voters in the Democratic side say they plan to write Joe Biden in. And if you're wondering why Joe Biden isn't on the ballot in New Hampshire, it's because his campaign did not file to be a candidate on the state's primary ballot because the primary is in violation of the DNC's rules for the nomination process because of the whole South Carolina thing, and South Carolina being first in the process now. So because of that violation, they don't have Joe Biden on the ballot. However, 63% of likely primary voters I'm sorry, 91% of primary voters are fully aware of this write-in ballot initiative, and 63% of Democratic voters are going to be writing in Joe Biden's name on the ballot. Now is a good time to draw these contrasts, right? Because what you hear from the Trump supporters is that, hey, Donald Trump is really strong. Every time he gets indicted, there's a groundswell of support for him. So, okay, let's take that premise and let's run with it. So, what happened in Iowa? Why was there a 50 or 60,000 drop in Iowa caucus goers if the groundswell for Donald Trump support was really there? Why is it that in the New Hampshire primary poll, in the most recent one, that he's only getting 50%, as basically he's the incumbent? He's only getting 50%. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, who is supposedly weak and mentally deficient, he's getting 63% of voters on the Democratic side via a write-in candidacy. Like, make that make sense to me. How is it that everyone, like the MAGA side, is saying, oh yeah, our side is really strong and your side is really weak, when Iowa caucus, not a record number of caucus goers. Actually, it was a 50 to 60K drop compared to 2016, the last time that Trump was on the ballot. New Hampshire primary, most recent polling, he's holding a commanding lead of 50%, but compare that to the incumbent on the other side, 63%. And he's not even on the ballot. They're writing his name in. So it seems like our side is way more motivated than their side, and I love that for them. I've always said that that I would rather play this hand than the hand the Republicans are dealt. because it just seems like we're in a much better position to win the White House. Now, that's not forecasting anything. That's not predicting anything, because, again, it is a 50-50. It is a toss-up. Anything can happen. So, definitely get out there, do everything you can to make sure that we reelect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Because, yeah, we just got to do everything we can to make sure that they win. Yeah, because we know that Donald Trump is going to be a horrible president. He's made no secret about it. We can couple it with and then you got to pair it with the success of the Biden-Harris administration, right? Because we know that Donald Trump is horrible. We know what he's done in his first term, and we know what he plans to do if he gets reelected. Like, it hasn't been a secret at all. But it's not obviously enough to just say, well, this person's really, really bad. We can talk about the super successes, the super historic legislation that Joe Biden and that Joe Biden has signed, and the historic legislation that Kamala Harris was able to push through in the Senate by breaking ties. So yeah, there's a lot of information out there, and obviously as we get closer and closer to election season, we will be highlighting those successes. But anytime I'm asked, I'm happy to go through it because what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done within one term, completely historic. Like, they are the best president and vice president I've had in my lifetime. Now let me go through the comments. Yep, and they are here in their first term. Joe, you're high. Okay, dude, I can see it in your face. You're turning red, bro. You almost as red as the hat you got on. Jose, why you look? See, Jose, why? What? Why Jose look? What is on your? What does this mean? Can someone explain that to me? I don't understand. Let's see. Face it. If the biggest threat to democracy, your worst brain. Okay. You are right. That's why we got 8 million immigrants up in our land. That's funny coming from someone named Jose. Let's see. Biden had the. I always think this type of stuff is funny. Sorry, I'm like doing soliloquies. Look at this. Why is this comment coming from someone named Jose? That's what I'm trying to understand. Like, no irony there, Jose. Like, I mean, I'm a Jose too, but I mean, like, no lights flickering in there when you're saying stuff like this. Like, nothing at all. Like, you're saying this with your whole chest, and it doesn't have a boomerang effect on you, on your conscience when you're saying it. Like, come on. Oh, hello, Tiff. Hello, Tiff, guys. Welcome, Tiffany. She is amazing. Please follow her if you're not following her. She is armed with so many facts. She helps me understand shit when I really don't understand it, especially when it comes to filings and money and how money moves. Like, sometimes she has to explain it to me 2 or 3 times because I'm just like, I went to public school in New York City when we had asbestos in our buildings and lead paint. So I'm not the quickest guy, but she definitely helps me unpack all of that.
LOL with the damn freaking asbestos. Really, Jose? Oh
I
my
had to bring it
God.
back because I remember they shut down the school after I graduated to remove asbestos.
You're special, but I
Yep.
love you. Oh my goodness. Well, today was a day, now wasn't
To
it?
Yeah, what a day, right? It was I think you know this. Hold on, we'll wait for you. Biden is
Sorry,
there you go.
I was trying to tell people we were on Twitter. I was trying to tell
Oh,
people we were
okay.
on Twitter so that they know, so they can join here with us.
Oh yeah, I never mention it
Yeah,
on there. I just like go on and I'm just like,
you
okay, if
never
they
do.
I never promote it. But yeah, so I was at the gym when it happened, and it was just like, oh shit, it's happening. It's really happening. And I just think it's funny because, again, everyone was looking at Nikki Haley sideways because Nikki Haley made that comment like, oh, it's a two-person race. And I'm like, bro, you came in third place. How is it a two-person race? And then now he's dropping out. And I'm wondering if he dropped out because of the polling. I wonder if his internal polling showed that it was going to be a disaster for him.
Honey, the external polling was not doing much better because he was at 6%.
6%.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
that's
he's at 6% in New Hampshire and at 6% in South Carolina. Dude had literally no chance in hell, okay?
yep. Zero
But did
delegates.
but
Zero delegates.
did you see the you may have not seen this, but I just saw this on Twitter. The Koch brothers released a statement about Trump saying that they don't believe that he can win the election. And, obviously DeSantis runs, is out the race. But now they're like, okay, well, you have Nikki, but we know Nikki can, according to them, beat Joe Biden. But they're basically saying, yeah, it's pretty much a wrap. And so either you get on the Nikki train or just kind of just stuck with Trump. And that's going to be what's going to happen because the people
Yep.
are going to be stuck with Trump because they're MAGA. Hello.
Exactly. There's too many of them that have infiltrated the Republican process. Like just too many. It's just like infested with MAGA folks. That's just what it is. It's an infestation of MAGA, and I love that for them. And I hope that if Donald Trump loses this election, that they continue, trying to nominate him 4 years later, 4 years after the just, take his, do like I said on the Twitter space. I was like, just do a séance if you have to, get a spirit out there, and nominate that.
I mean, that's all they're running on. They're running on hope and not change because they're running on hope. That's
No,
it. There's no
no,
change
it's just
happening. No,
grievance.
it's just pure. Listen, grievance politics sells, and Trump is basically the best at grievance. Right? He has always run his campaigns on grievance. Not on records. He didn't have a record in 2016. He didn't. His record in 2020 was a disaster, except for maybe the economy. I'm not going to take that from him. He had a decent economy until he ruined it with COVID. So I will give him credit for the things that he did, but it wasn't like he was this phenomenal president. I mean, he had so many
Right.
issues. So the people saying like, "Oh my God, the economy is so bad." No, the economy is recovering because Trump ruined it. Like every other freaking Republican president that comes into office, we always have to clean up their goddamn mess.
Exactly. That always happens. And I mean, I know you're giving Trump, some of his credit, but I mean, it was really like not the hardest thing to do to take the
Right.
Obama economy and
Exactly.
usher and grow it. Because I mean, it was already growing. But even leading economists had said that if the pandemic had not happened, we would still be in a downward trend with the economy,
Well,
just because of his policy.
he spent a lot of money. Like the
Right.
thing is that people are like, "Oh my God, Trump, the Biden administration has basically, spent all this money and we're in a deficit." Honey, what the hell were y'all looking at? Because Trump was in a deficit. You think his tax cuts were free for the rich? They
Record spending.
absolutely not. Okay? None. Listen,
Record spending levels.
so yeah, I mean, the economy was the economy. That was what he was, like you said, he inherited it from an Obama on the up and up, and he took it and he ruined it. And Joe Biden had to come in and clean up his disaster that he made. And it's fine. It is what it is, but he didn't do anything to reduce the deficit. Let's be real about this.
Exactly. And then I don't know if you saw the consumer sentiment, that basically like the window into the nation's
Mhm.
financial mood, that's starting to catch up. What is it at? I know it rose 29%, which is like the largest 2 month increase over 30 years. Which is huge because now the facts on the ground are aligning with the consumer sentiment. It took consumer sentiment to
Yeah.
catch up to what the facts on the ground, but it's definitely like it could not have happened at a better time than election year. Like I'm just glad
Well,
that that's
yeah.
changing.
Well, that was always the goal, right? I mean, inflation was inflation and it happened and people were like, "Oh my God, it happened." Yes, it happened under Biden because we had a pandemic. We also had Ukraine war that started. All of those things trickled down to become the inflation, and it's a global inflation. It's not just an American inflation that we're dealing with. And guess what? We are actually doing better than the rest of the G7
Yeah,
with
yeah, we're the
inflation.
leading. We're
So
believing in
people
pandemic
saying,
recovery.
people saying, well, like there's so much inflation. Yes, in 2022, we reached our peak on inflation, and it has slowly been coming down. Of course, there's ebbs and flows. There's always going to be that, because every month something is going to be high, something's going to be low. Gas changes frequently, which sometimes drives it up. Food, it depends on the month of what's going on in the world. Like, there's so many different things. But if we get back down to, I mean, Trump didn't have zero inflation. He was at about
Right.
2.5%, which is where we should be. So it's, I mean, people, and somebody today said in my comment, like, the Inflation Reduction Act didn't do anything. Okay, well, if we didn't have the Inflation Reduction Act, then what do you think was going to happen? Like, what we would still be, you just want the excuse to say that inflation is high. That's just keep saying
Right.
that because you don't care that it's down. You care that it's not, that it's under Biden and it happened under him. So it's bullshit.
Exactly. And then you don't even have to take our word for it or Biden's word for it or even a Democrat's word for it. You can just look at how Republicans are moving when their districts or their counties or their states are benefiting from the money that Joe Biden has signed for them through like the Infrastructure Act. They're showing up at those ribbon cuttings. They didn't bother to cast one single vote, but they are showing up and they're praising the money that they're getting. So you
Of
know
course,
that,
it makes
that's
them
how
look
this
good.
was. Yeah. And that's how you know this was an amazing piece of legislation, because it's just like, okay, they're touting what they're getting. They just didn't want to contribute to giving Joe Biden credit
Of course,
or
they never
victory.
want. Why give Joe Biden credit for anything when you could take the credit all for yourself?
Right,
I
exactly, and
mean,
that's the thing, and
what's
that's
the
what's
point?
happening, and that's what's happening with the border too. Like they're voting against funding for the border. They have voted against him, but at the same time, they're also complaining that all this stuff is happening at the border, that the border needs to be sealed up, that the border needs to be secured. Meanwhile, they're this close to coming to a compromise on border
Right.
security. And what's happening? Republicans want to sabotage it because they're afraid that it's going to mean more. It's going to put more wind in Joe Biden's
I
sails.
mean, and they've openly admitted it. I mean, it's not like,
Yeah,
I mean, what's his? I forgot the guy's name. It's something with the N. One of the reps. I don't forgot what state he's from, but he literally said it out loud, and he was like, "We're not trying to give Joe Biden a win on the border." And fair enough,
yep,
you can do whatever you want. Mitch McConnell is pushing for that bill because he knows that he needs to get he needs to get people like people reelected. So if they don't have a compromise on this, they're not gonna that is something that Democrats can use against them and say, well, they're always talking about the border and they don't want to do anything. Mitch McConnell's an idiot, but he knows politics, and he knows that this is a bad look for Republicans if you came to an agreement and you can't get that agreement passed after all these damn years of going against we got to this point before where we had a bill and it was killed. It was killed because we needed 60 votes. And it looks like the Democrats and the Republicans have the 60 votes they need in the Senate, but Republicans in the House refuse to do anything about it, which really sucks.
and that's another thing, because Mike Johnson is basically in the same situation that Kevin McCarthy was
Oh my
in,
God.
like because he needs Democrats to jump up. I mean, at this point with oh God, what's his face? Who's the guy that got expelled? I forget his name.
Oh, you mean George Santos?
Thank you. Oh my God. So with
Oh my
George
God, how could you
Santos,
forget George Santos?
I mean, out of sight, out of mind. So George Santos got expelled. Steve Scalise is undergoing cancer treatment. One dude is retiring because he decided to become president of some university. So Republicans have a majority in name only. Mike Johnson needs the support of Democrats to put whatever it is that he wants to push through. I mean, that's just what it is. So it's definitely split, and we saw that with the stopgap measure. I mean, it was like evenly split between Republicans and
Yeah, well,
like the
100
ultra
and
hardcore
yeah,
7
100
and
and what,
106.
106. Yeah, 106 Republicans voted to shut down the government. Basically,
Yeah.
two Democrats. I don't know who it was. It was two. There were two. I didn't look up the names, but yeah, it's they. There are people who want to do work in the Congress that are Republicans, and there's people who don't want to do anything. We know who those people are that don't want to do work. That's the Matt Gaetz and the Marjorie Taylor Greens and all the rest of those fools. Marjorie Taylor Greene threatened Mike Johnson last week. over the border.
Oh
That
yeah,
oh, I mean,
that's right. I
over
forgot about that.
over
Yes.
Ukraine. It was over
Hmm.
Ukraine that she would use the motion to vacate. And I think that's actually pretty hilarious because, like you said, we're in the same position that Kevin McCarthy was in September, at the end of September, when he got kicked out. This is what they do. They have this tool as a threatening thing to these leaders. And
Yeah.
Mike Johnson, he's like, he doesn't know what to do. He first of all, he has no experience in doing anything in leadership. So this is kind of like a test run of what he can do, and he's failing at every point. I mean, the whole
Yep.
impeachment thing is a freaking nightmare. All the Hunter Biden thing has turned into a whole shit show. And then you have this shutdown, which is now not happening, but extended to March. And the thing is, we're gonna do the same show once again in March, and we're gonna extend it until April or May, and it's gonna keep going and going and going because these people cannot come to an agreement on the
They can't
budget.
govern.
They don't know
They
how to
can't
govern.
govern. I will say though, I have one confession to make for anyone that's listening. Mike Johnson does have really nice skin, so I just want to turn his face into like a Pollock painting, and just splatter it. I just really like his
I am
face.
done with you. I am done. He does have really nice skin, which is very confusing to me because he has nice hair too. I will give him that. He has
Yeah,
like he's not a bad looking guy. He's just not a great person, which is terrible for him. Jesus is not going to
yeah.
save him with that whole attitude of his. But whatever.
And then they're also highlighting for people how badly they don't know how to govern when they're given a majority in one of the chambers of Congress. Like what happened with the impeachment. Oh God. Do you remember Kings of Comedy?
Hmm.
Do you remember, was it not Cedric? Who was it that said the wish factor? Do you remember?
I don't think so.
He's like, oh, okay. Part of the joke is that white folks when they go to a concert, they're like, I hope no one's sitting in my chair. I hope no one's sitting in my chair. But black folks, what they say is like, I wish someone would be sitting in my chair when I go out there.
Absolutely.
So that's the wish factor. So I was applying the wish factor to Republicans and wishing that they would bring those impeachment articles to the floor because I wanted to see it
Me
fail.
too.
They didn't have the numbers. They just didn't. And Kevin McCarthy knew that. That's why he referred it over to committees because he did not he knew that that was going to fail and it was going to be a huge embarrassment. And he knows that like what was it, the 2019 or 20 Republican congressmen who are in Biden won districts, they weren't like a majority of them weren't going to go for it. So the numbers were never there. So now what's going to happen with the impeachment process? Because I know Comer, he was kind of backtracking. What was it, like a week ago? He was like, "Oh, it's not our job to impeach Joe Biden." It's like, skirt. That's not what you said.
Yeah, well, he
Like,
keeps
that's not
going.
what you
I
said.
mean, he has two horrible investigations happening. I mean, they're both combined. But the Hunter Biden shit show was just hilarious. When Hunter showed up, I mean, I watched that hearing. I haven't watched the hearing in years because I usually gotta leave that to you and the rest of the folks to watch them and let me know what's going on. I gave up on hearings in 2020. Okay, and I watched that entire hearing from like the start to like the middle. But when Jasmine Crockett tore into those Republicans and especially Nancy Mace, it made my day. I was in the car like, yeah,
Hmm.
girl, get it. I was like, this is what I'm talking about. Like there are such embarrassments that it is almost hilarious. If this wasn't our government that actually, was at risk and that there was like actual work that needed to be done, then this would be like a comedy show. And yes, Moskovitz absolutely was amazing. All of them, Dan Goldman, even AOC. I don't even like that girl, but I will give her credit. She did go back at Nancy Mace because she had receipts.
Hmm.
And I think that is the best thing that Democrats have going for them is that they actually have receipts to be like, nah, what you're talking about makes absolutely no sense. And you don't even have what you need. Oh, and by the way, Hunter Biden was here today and you didn't want to do shit. So it's actually funny. But this is par for the course. We knew this was coming in. When I looked at my New Year's video, and I was like, when I was like from last year, I was like, yeah, it's gonna be a hot mess, and sure enough, it was a hot ass mess. And no, I don't like AOC because I feel like she does the most and doesn't have any receipts to. She doesn't have any receipts on her own to
It's
show the work that
yeah.
she's done. But
What,
I mean,
what,
I will say something has changed in her. She hasn't been
yes,
as
yes.
vocal. She hasn't been as vocal as she was before. Hasn't been as performative. Which maybe she's seeing the light. I think she knows that if we take the House back in 2024, that she wants a leadership role, and so maybe this is her like turning point of actually looking and acting like an adult, which I appreciate.
Yeah, she's definitely. I'm noticing a very slight pivot towards more democratic norms.
Mm-hmm.
Which is refreshing. But because before, Homegirl was like doing the most and achieving the least by passing zero
Exactly.
pieces of
Yeah.
legislation that she
She's
sponsored.
always
So
the thing is she's always been really good at hearings. She's always been somebody
mhm.
who is good at hearings and that kind of thing. But I think like her Twitter has totally changed in the last
Yep.
couple of months. She's not as reckless as she was before, which I appreciate. And I hope this is like a actual thing that because I think she does have some talent, but it's
Hmm.
just not honed in the right way. So maybe if she can hone that talent into not being super duper ultra progressive and actually acting like a Democrat and
Right.
and you can be progressive. There's nothing wrong with being progressive. There's many progressive people in the Congress, but they don't act like a fool. And I want her to not act
Right.
a fool.
And then to elaborate on that one, I know when I talk about stuff like that, it's not the ideals that she possesses that is that bothers me specifically. It's more that she will not apply like any kind of risk aversion tactics to her vote. Like
Yep.
it used to be all or nothing, but it seems like she's pivoting away from that now, and that she's realizing like, okay, well, if we don't go with incremental progress, we're going to go back decades if we allow these Republicans to win. So
Exactly.
it's just like, do I want like just a tiny, tiny bit of progress that's trending in the right direction, or do I really want to like leave a space where Republicans can exploit, and now we're fucked.
Yeah, listen, pragmatic progressives are my favorite Dems
Yep.
who want progress but understand that it's not. It's sometimes you have to take three-fourths rather than the whole to actually get things going. And so I'm hoping that she has learned that over the last, I don't know, what is it, since when she got there in 2019. So hopefully over the last like 6 years, she's not a freshman anymore. She's been there. Dallas, shut up.
Dallas
Hopefully
does not like
Dallas says I don't want to talk
the.
about this. She wants her buzz. But hopefully she will. She has changed, and she can let the other people do whatever they want to do. Right, the Rashidas, the Ilhans, the Cori Bush, and the rest of her little squad. I haven't even heard her shout out the squad. So I think that she is
Yeah.
definitely moving on. Dallas is a brat, okay? That's all she is. But she's gonna get fixed right now, so I could actually talk. So I'll be right back.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Dallas always got something to say. Let's see. It's all about compromise. That's right, Adika. Vote blue no matter who. Talib needs to go. I agree. Yeah, I'll give her that. AOC knows she can lose a primary, and Aliyah, she needs to compromise. Uh, let's see. I have someone who wants to come up. So while we wait for Tiff to come, Luis, you have the floor. What's on
Okay.
your mind?
Oh man, after seeing DeSantis drop out of the race and supporting Trump, I I don't know what to tell you, man, but it's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, I would say it's very, very, very embarrassing to put all that money, all that time, all those resources to just bow out, never once landing a glove on the person who's going to be the nominee, never really bringing a real challenge to them. And the only time that he was fighting was anyone below second place. That's the only time he ever had the energy
A
to or
hundred
bring the
percent.
heat to him. It's just like, why be in a race? Like what? Why be in a competition if you're going to go after anyone below second place?
That, and then I'm just thinking to myself, like, are these people really, really stupid to like vote for someone that doesn't even care about them? Like,
Oh yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
don't know if you agree with me, but I find it embarrassing, especially Latinos for Trump, who
Oh yeah.
stand
That's
by and support. And I'm like, he doesn't want your people here. You can go
nope.
off and say all you want about Joe Biden, but let me tell you something. And I'm about to get very, very emotional. How are you going to tell me that you support Trump when Trump tried to rescind the DACA program, which protects many students like myself from being able to be here in the United States? I've met people who their doc is myself and they supported Trump. And I'm just like, did you see what he tried to do? Did you see what he tried to do? Like, where would you be if he had rescinded it? Where would you be? Nowhere. I'm
We
just like,
saw members of the military get deported, who happened to support Trump actually, and they ended up getting deported. It was I don't understand. I don't get
it's
it.
it's embarrassing. And then I'm gonna bring up another point. Florida. You have so many people from Florida, Cubans, Venezuelans, Colombians, the list goes on, and they all support Trump. And I'm like, he doesn't want you here. I remember reading the other day, well, it happened a long time ago, but it's crazy how history repeats itself. Trump limited Western Union to people from Cuba, from you being able to send money to your family in Cuba. When I read that, I just think to myself, does that not affect anyone who's Cuban? Like, does that not affect any of you guys? Like, how are you going to be able to help your own family living in a country with a dictatorship? Like, that doesn't make sense. Then I'm going to share another experience. I was in school 2 years ago and I graduated. There was a student who was a refugee from Venezuela. He came under a visa. And this guy started saying, well, if you're undocumented, well, if you're a TPS recipient, if you're an undocumented person, you don't deserve to be here. You should just be deported and you should just, be gone. He was with this really far right organization on the campus. And I went off and I told him, who are you to be denying anyone to be here when no one denied you the right? You do
Right.
realize that, right? And he just stayed quiet. And the group was just looking at me. And I was telling him, people like you are the exact reason why your country is the way it is. And people like you are embarrassing. You shouldn't even
Good
be
for
talking.
you.
Like, who are you to
No,
be
you're
saying that, man?
you're absolutely right. There are people, like folks in my family too, who came here illegally and now they're here legally, and they want to shut the door behind them, and it's just like, does
It,
how can you be so selfish, so cruel? You were in the same predicament, and now you're taking the ladder away from other folks. Why would you do
there's
that?
there's so many politicians. I'm gonna bring up two of them, and I don't want to take a lot of time because you guys are being respectful to me on your live, and I want to, abide by y'all's rules. Look at Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. Marco
Yep.
Rubio's grandfather was ordered to be deported, and when he got interviewed, he got asked a tough question. Why is it that your grandfather shouldn't have been deported, but you want to deport other people? And he's just fumbling the question, can't even answer it, and he's just, you know, trying to like avoid it or dodge it, and it's like, you're in the wrong. You just don't want to admit it.
Yep. And then speaking, Luis, thank you so much for coming up. I'm going to bring you back down because Tiff is back from giving her dog lettuce. But thank you so much, Luis.
No,
Am I following you,
thank you.
or I
No,
am not?
I don't think so, but
All right, I just hit follow. Thanks so much, and Luis, you are welcome anytime. Thank you so much for
no.
communicating that.
Mhm.
It was super awesome. Thank you so much, and
No,
you're welcome
you
back
have a nice
anytime.
day. Y'all be safe. Thank you.
You too.
Well, that was good. Listen, we are both Latinos and we both understand this whole immigration thing for what it is. Like you said, in my family there are people that came here illegally, and those people say the same bullshit and it drives me crazy. I'm sure you've heard it yourself where they're like, "Yeah, but we did it the right way." Your way was coming here illegally, and then you
Yep.
actually got to stay here. So you can't sit here and say that. It's like it's absurd in so many levels, because people, like you said, are selfish to other people coming here to be able to, whatever they think, take their jobs, or to be able to have a better life, or because they came through the border and they didn't just overstay their visa, whatever they think of it. Is it's really unfair, an unfair system, because you're living here in luxury in America, not having to deal with dictators, people coming trying to kill you, your kids, you know, robbing you, killing your family members. But you know, it's easy to say that when, you know, let's say the grass is always greener on the other side, because your ass wouldn't want to be deported back to that country. I promise you that.
Yep.
It's
And
kind
then
of
I just want to
sad.
I and then one thing I wanted to elaborate on that Lewis mentioned was when he mentioned Ted Cruz. So we know Republicans are feel a certain way about immigration. Let's remove all of that. Rep- Donald Trump during the 2016 primary suggested that Ted Cruz had something to do with
That
JFK's
was wild.
assassination, and then he suggested that his wife Heidi had some kind of secret, some skeletons in her closet. Like those two things alone, if someone had said that about my damn dogs, I would have been like, all right, I'm not rolling with you. I'm good. But you
But
know,
why did
this
Trump
is
do that? Why did Trump do that? Because Ted Cruz won in Iowa, and
yep.
and when Donald Trump feels threatened by any means necessary, which is why he's attacking Nikki Haley right now and calling her, you know, all kinds of names, and you know, Nimrod, and Nimrod is spelled wrong. Like this is what he is. And people know this, and they like this. They like the fact that he is this kind of disgusting human being. They like the fact that he will degrade and demean a woman, especially a brown woman, right? They know that she's not a white woman. They know that she is a brown woman. He's using her name as a weapon against her to prove that she is not like him. The dog whistles are very loud and they are very clear, and we all can see it. But the sad part is that Nikki Haley will endorse him when she gets out the race. And so just like Ron DeSantis, how many times did Trump disrespect Ron DeSantis on the campaign trail? Many.
Hmm.
But these folks will fall in line because that's what they do.
Yep. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy came
Oh
out and he was like,
God.
"Holy crap, they were some racist people." I'm just like, okay, but yeah, to
Yeah,
draw
but
some
another one,
contra. So go ahead.
yeah, well, another one who denied racism, right? He's
Yep.
like act like racism didn't exist until the racism got real, and they basically told him about himself. Sad to
Yep.
say.
They sure did, and yeah, I'm sorry that he went through that. But I mean, when you're saying it doesn't exist, it's gonna come, and you're gonna see it. It is what it is. But to draw some contrast with what Republicans are offering versus what Democrats are offering, so we have Ron DeSantis who just dropped out, who suggested that slaves benefited from being slaves because they picked up some skills on the way. That was something that he said when he defended the Florida curriculum. We have Nikki Haley, who says we're not in a racist country. We have Donald Trump, who's just, Donald Trump. And that, and the leading candidate isn't really offering anything for the American people. What the leading candidate is offering is revenge on political opponents. And that's what he did in 2020. That's what he did in 2016. And people keep falling for it. People keep, like, he was going to lock up Hillary. And
Oh my
then he was going to
God.
lock up Obama. Then he was going to lock up Pelosi. That like he keeps kicking the can down the road as far as who he's going to lock up, and it's just not going to happen. I don't see it happening. I do think that he's going to try to hold on to power if he gets another opportunity. But the whole thing is just he's pitching the same thing he did in 2016 and again in 2020. Like the whole drain the swamp thing. Like you had a term. What happened? What
Yeah,
happened with the
well,
swamp?
yeah, the whole time we're focusing. Well, listen, Trump did not drain the swamp. Trump is the swamp.
Yep.
So he is actually the swamp. And I don't understand how his followers don't, and supporters don't see that he is is a rich white man. I mean, he is the swamp. He is all of the people. He is not. Ron DeSantis tried to run as an outsider. Like he tried to run as the outside candidate and the people, the person who was not in the establishment. That didn't really go well for him. Trump tried that in 2016. It worked for him because he was actually on the outside, right? He was
Yep.
he was not a politician. Ron DeSantis is a politician, and he's there's a lot of things I could say about him, but Trump is no longer on the outside. Trump is actually on the inside. So that whole line of thought does not, to me, it doesn't work. But again, when you're in a cult, everything the cult leader says you believe, right? So people don't want to believe that that he is on the inside. He is sitting on his gold toilet taking a shit, and they're like, yeah, they're like, he's just like us. No,
just like
not
us.
like you. He's not like you. You don't have millions of dollars. You're not. You might actually be broke just like him, but he's in a different kind of category of broke. You don't have 91 charges against you, because if you did, you'd probably be locked up. So yeah, he's definitely not like you. But he is an elitist, and he will go down in history as the worst president, I believe. And y'all are gonna support him no matter what. So it doesn't really matter what I have to say, but I'm still gonna talk shit about him.
And when it comes to Trump, I mean, being a New Yorker, you know that he does not want the stench of poor. He doesn't want the stench of poor on him. That's why he's not going around talking to people. He just goes on his podium. He does his little firebrand thing, and then he pieces out. He's not going to start like shaking hands, going to people's homes, showing up at barbecues. That's not who he is, because again, he does not want the stench of his own supporters on him, because he just thinks they're beneath him. That's just what he thinks.
Right? Can you imagine Trump going to someone's home like Joe Biden did, talking to them, eating fast food, and talking about a policy that he helped this person with? Absolutely not. Trump does not have the gravitas, nor does he have the wherewithal to sit there in somebody's house that is not to his standard, that is not something that he would ever do, because guess what? He values money. He values people that have money, and he has always lived that lifestyle. Like you said, we're from New York. We have seen him. We know that Trump believes that these people are beneath him, but he knows that he needs them. And so he will even talk down to them. He will talk bad about them, and they don't even get it. It goes right over their head, because they're caught up.
Yeah, when he said that when he said that he like pew someone on was it Fifth Avenue and wouldn't lose support, he's basically saying, yeah, I run this cult and they'll do whatever I say. And they were just like, oh yeah, we will, like a bunch of lemmings. I was like, okay, well,
yeah.
that's
And listen, you have two different, like, all these people are in the comments, saying that Joe Biden is this, Joe Biden is that, but at the end of the day, Joe Biden actually has gotten things done. I can't tell you anything that Trump has got done during his 4 years as policy wise, other than the tax cuts, which we know cost a hell of a lot of money, and we know that he got the First Step Act done, not because he did anything to pass it, he just signed it. And I can name 5 bills that Joe Biden got passed, but what did Trump do? Nothing. And that's
Trump. One of the things that he did. Sorry to cut you off, Tiff.
Yeah,
one
no
of the
worries.
things that he did was, remember those community banks that went under. When was it, like last year, or was it last year or 2 years ago? Those like Signature Bank, and I forget which other local banks like completely went bankrupt. It was because of the deregulations that happened during the Trump presidency. Because basically what was happening is that they didn't have the capital to sustain the loans that they were giving out. And that's why they went bankrupt. And that was directly attributed to Donald Trump, because Donald Trump had one of these ribbon cutting ceremonies, because everything is a damn event to him. So he had all these piles of paper with his red tape, and then he cut it, and he's like, this is how many regulations we're removing from blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, now banks went under. Good job.
Yeah, remember they used to come out with the stacks of paper that didn't have anything on them?
Yep.
Like I have so many repressed memories from Trump from the Trump days of all the crazy shit that he was doing. Like there was so many crazy days, and I think that's why a lot of people, they kind of tuned out from politics because it
Hmm.
was so insane for 4 years. And even though people like to talk crap about Biden, at the end of the day, the reason that people aren't necessarily watching news or not as into politics is because Biden is just doing his job. When Obama was in office, I wasn't on watching TV nonstop and trying to figure
Yeah.
out like what was going on. It was kind of status quo and everything was moving along, and I could sleep at night, and I've been able to sleep for the last 3 years.
Yep.
I've been able to sleep. I mean, it doesn't look like it because my eyes, my dark circles, but I definitely sleep much better knowing that his maniac self is not on Twitter saying the most outrageous things, and he's also not having those damn nuclear codes that he could literally just do whatever he wants with at any time. And the thing is, if he gets a second term, he's gonna be even more crazy. And I don't think
Yep.
people understand how crazy he could be. And I really do not like talking about him because I feel like he's such a poison to our country. But it is what it is. He's gonna be the nominee, and unfortunately, we're gonna have to talk about him because he's a problem. He's gonna be a problem.
Exactly. And let me just take a quick commercial break. If you're in here hearing the sound of my voice and you're not following me or you're not following Tiff, please follow us. I would appreciate it. And we have 41.1 likes. If we can get that to 50K, I would love it. Just use your finger to tap the screen. Please tap me as hard or as soft as you want. Either way feels good to me. But if you use two fingers, it's going to feel even better. I promise you. I don't know how you feel about one or two fingers, Tiff, but I love two fingers instead of one. So just you tap with two fingers, please. That would be amazing. And yeah, please thank you for that. Thank you for the chili peppers. The chili peppers come up whenever I'm spicy. That's become a thing. I don't know how it became a thing, but yeah. But yeah, I wanted to talk about the CNN poll that came out, right? So we were talking earlier, like, okay, maybe DeSantis's polls showed what his internal polls matched what the external polls were showing, which was that DeSantis was basically getting 6% in New Hampshire, and now in order to get delegates, you have to achieve 10%
10.
at least in the Republican
Yes.
primary. So
Yep.
that's pretty embarrassing. But what I wanted to talk about was about the support that Donald Trump is getting. So Donald Trump is on the ballot, and he's securing 50%. Now, my understanding from the MAGA side is that every time Donald Trump gets indicted, every time something happens in court, there's a groundswell of support for Donald Trump, that people are going to come out for him. But I am not seeing that. I don't see it in this poll, because when you compare it to what's happening with Joe Biden in New Hampshire, by the way, Joe Biden is not on the ballot in New Hampshire because the DNC violated the primary rules. So now there's an effort to write Joe Biden's candidacy on the ballot. So according to that CNN poll, 92% of likely Democratic primary voters are saying that they are completely aware of the write-in ballot initiative, and 63% of the voters, the likely Democratic primary voters, are going to write Biden's name in. So I just think it's interesting that this incumbent is getting 63% with a write-in ballot initiative, and the other guy who's on the ballot on the Republican primary is only getting 50%. Where is this? And what I'm interested to see in the New Hampshire primary is turnout, because
Yep.
we didn't see the turnout in the Iowa caucus. There was a dip of 50 to 60,000 less than there was this year. And he wasn't indicted. He wasn't, he wasn't impeached in 2016, which was the last time he was on the primary ballot. So where is that groundswell of support to show everybody, like, hey, we are really standing behind this guy and we're all going to march to the polls? It's like, where is it?
What's gonna be funny is if Joe Biden and the Democrats, let's go with the Democrats, get more people to turn out in a primary that has no bearing on any delegates. They're not going to be awarded any delegates. If more Democrats and independents turn out for that race and that primary versus the Republican primary, that will tell me a lot. So if
Yep.
So if you get 100,000 people, I don't know, I don't remember the numbers, but you get, let's just use 100,000. If you get 100,000 people to turn out on a write-in candidate, right? And a write-in, and basically that's what it is, because it's like no one cares about Dean Phillips. Who the hell is that guy? And no one cares about Marianne Williamson. So you get those, you get 100,000. But let's say, you know, there's only, you know, 80,000 that show up for Trump, right? I mean, this is gonna be an interesting race because, first of all, there's not many primaries coming up where there's actually both sides on the ballot. We have this one. South Carolina has 2 different dates for the Republican and the Democrat primary. The rest of the states have the same thing. In Nevada, they aren't even, they're doing a caucus even though Nikki Haley is on the ballot. The whole thing is just stupid. So it's gonna be interesting to see on Tuesday what that actually looks like in terms of turnout. And I have a funny feeling that that Democrats are more enthusiastic in the state of New Hampshire. Polling shows that Donald Trump is losing to Joe Biden in New Hampshire in the general election, and people will like a lot of Democrats are probably going to turn out just to prove a point, because remember the DNC basically told them they cannot go first or second usually as they normally do, and they refuse to change the date, blah blah blah. So they might feel a little bit of a way and want to prove their worth in terms of the schedule, so they may show up and try to show that they actually matter.
Yep. What do you think of Nikki Haley staying in the race? Are you for her staying in the race, or are you for her packing up early and let's just get into general election mode?
Honestly, I really don't. I think she's not going to win either way. But if for her self-respect, I think it's probably better. It's better for her to leave the race. It may not necessarily Tuesday night. She may have to think it over, think it over. It depends on how much she loses by. If she loses by like 30%, it's a wrap. I mean, there's no coming back from that. If she's somewhere in the between 10% and closer to winning, she may actually feel like it's worth it for her to stay in the race. But she's gonna get attacked for an entire few weeks of Trump going at her hardcore, and she knows, and the polling shows that she is not in any position to win her own state. So staying in the race and losing in your own state is kind of an embarrassment that you might not want to bring onto yourself if you have any intentions of running in 2028, which I'm sure Nikki Haley believes that she has a better chance of running in 2028 because she has built up some clout, I guess you could say, within the Republican Party over the last couple of months. It's not like, she did come in second in Iowa, far second, but she came in second. So she has some support there, and you want that support to carry over into 2028. But if she loses her own state and then loses on Super Tuesday, she doesn't really have a chance in hell. She's going to be Elizabeth Warren 2.0, and that's not a good look either. So I don't like her personally, but if I'm her strategist, I'm telling her, hey, I think you should bow out before you get to your state if it makes sense. I don't see what the point is. The whole party is basically not with her. Tim Scott basically endorsed Donald Trump. The governor endorsed Donald Trump. Like, there's no one there in South Carolina like a Jim Clyburn that can change the race to be for her.
A king or a queen maker.
There's no king maker. There's no queen maker. There's no, well, Tim Scott would have been the queen maker, but he went with Massa. So it is what it was.
I can't believe he pulled a girlfriend out of like the closeted Republican wardrobe.
But did you see that the girlfriend is being sued now? Like, it's a whole mess. Okay, it's just a whole disaster of shit shows that we have seen over the last couple of months. Tim Scott with the girlfriend and then leaving the race the next day was absolutely a total embarrassment for him. That poor lady. I mean, I really do hope she got paid well, because that was like really bad. Then today with Ron DeSantis, Chris Christie having to bow out. I mean, I know you had liked Chris Christie. Not that you liked him like that, but
Yeah.
you were hoping
I
you
I
had
was
high
instigating.
hopes for
I was
him.
instigating.
You
Yeah.
had high hopes for Christie. He did destroy Vivek at the end, which was good, because he basically took Vivek out of the running, like after he
Yeah.
destroyed him. So he did his job. It wasn't for Trump, but it was for Vivek. I don't know. This has been an interest. I think primaries are always interesting, because you kind of get to see how people actually feel about you. And I think Vivek got a pretty good view of how racism works in America. It's not always the things that are said out loud. It's kind of the things that are said behind closed doors, and the things that are microaggressions that will eventually come to light. And people saying that they thought he was Muslim, he's not. They don't know what he is. Like, they're talking about him as though he is an other. And guess
You're right.
what? You are an other, dude, come to these people in this lily white state, that you're not a white man and you're not Christian. So it's been interesting. It's been an interesting, like, I don't know, when did they start doing those doing the debates? I think that's kind of like when it all kind of, like, about June, right? I think June was the
Was
first
it?
one. I
Holy
want to say
shoot! Was it that long ago?
I want to say it was June that
Well,
they
let me
started
check
doing
real
those
quick.
debates. So it's been like 6 months. I'm pretty sure it was
August 23rd, 2020.
August. That was
2023.
the first one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So all the candidates at that point, I think, were in June, but then they did the first debate in August. So
Yep.
they've been going for a good who was the last person to get in the race? Was it Nikki Haley? Was she the last person?
Was it the governor of Miami? I mean, the mayor of
God.
Miami?
Oh my
Was it
God,
him?
Suarez, he was horrible.
Yeah.
And
I
he
think he was
he
the
dropped out. He was
then
like
he
the
dropped
last
out
person
'cause-
to get in and the first person to drop out, which was so
Right.
crazy.
It's
Yeah,
so
so
silly.
I mean, the field has been there. I mean, because I know Ron DeSantis has been in a really long time. I mean, he spent a lot of money in Iowa. He spent, I mean, his whole campaign, like $150 million spent. I mean, that's not money you're gonna get back. And the people who invested
Right.
in his campaign should be pretty pissed right now, because they should have known better. They should have known better. He's not in a position. He was never in a position to win against Trump. That was just not gonna
No.
happen.
He has no appeal. He
has
has
no
zero appeal.
charisma.
No charisma. He doesn't come off like someone who's confident in themselves. Like, I mean, that forced smile that he would always say. Like, you could tell he always wanted to be somewhere else when he was engaging with a voter. You could tell he just wanted to get the hell out of there. He's like, why am I spending my time talking to these people, wearing my damn lifts to make me look 4 inches taller? Why am I going through this? Like,
No, I think the most embarrassing video was the kids with the ice cream. Like, that was probably one of the worst ones, because he's just so disconnected from reality and how he talks to people that it just.
what did he say? What did he say? He's like, oh, that's a lot of calories, isn't it? Or something
Yeah,
like
something
that.
like that. Like, he's like the kids just like ice cream, you dumbass. Like, what are you doing? Like,
and he's like, oh, that's a lot of calories, or that's a lot of sugar. He's like,
yeah, that's a lot of sugar. Yeah, and then he's like, then the wife is in Iowa in like 90-degree weather with a leather jacket. She's like Miss Tacky O with her outfits that she wears. Like, these people live in like a total bubble of not understanding how people actually communicate, and that I will give Trump this credit. Even though he's like a total asshole, he actually is probably people find him comical, even though he's like so crass, but people actually do find him like relatable in that way. And
he commands a presence. I mean, he commands a presence.
He always has. He always commands a presence, like you said, and he knows how to work a crowd. And he knows like what works and what doesn't work. I mean, nowadays, I don't even know if he knows where he is at this point. I'm not saying that he has the D word, but he is all over the goddamn place.
That reminds me, when I was asking about the Nikki Haley question. So I do want Nikki Haley to stay in a little more. to expose more of those moments, because if it hadn't been
Right.
for Nikki Haley, we wouldn't have gotten that soundbite from Trump like, oh, Nikki Haley,
That's true.
didn't call the Capitol Police on January 6th, and he said it what 3 times, 4 times,
He
and he was like,
was.
Nikki Haley, Nikki Haley. I was like, okay.
I listened to the clip and I was like, who is he talking about? And then it finally hit me that he was talking about Nancy Pelosi. And I'm like, oh my God, he's just so crazy. Like,
Yep.
he really
And
is
and
just insane.
and that's why I wanted to stay in more. Also, because if Nikki Haley is going after Donald Trump as hard as she is in the past few days, I don't mind, because Democrats can sort of be like, okay, look, this is fun watching them go at it. Let
Right.
her keep exposing him a little bit more, because he's just gonna lose his cool a little bit. I mean, he calls her Nimrata now. Mistaken to her for Nancy Pelosi. It's just it's a little unglued, which is always
Right.
good
It's
news for us.
entertaining. Yeah, it's entertaining for us. But like I said, if she has any self-worth, any dignity, she is going to get destroyed by Trump. And as a woman, even though I do not like her at all, it will still be painful to watch Trump. Remember, Trump has only ran against one woman,
Mm-hmm.
and that was Carly Fiorina in
Yep.
2016, and he was so damn disgusting to her, and she dropped out early. This is a new territory for Trump, where he is going one-on-one with Nikki Haley, and he is going to be disgusting like no other, because he actually will feel, well, he went against Hillary, but it wasn't a
A
Republican.
Republican.
I was
Yeah.
speaking of Republican, but we know how he is with women. He's a misogynist, and he's most definitely going to just talk really bad about her. One thing, Hillary was not a brown woman. Nikki Haley is, so he's going to use the race factor to not
Yep.
only misogyny, but he's going to use her name, her.
He's going to weaponize
He's going to
racism.
weaponize it
Yeah.
all to prove that she
All the
is not
micros.
all the micros in the world. I mean, he even talked about the fact he gave her the job because,
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to get her out of South Carolina. I mean, this man
Yep.
is disgusting. He has no moral compass. So he is, but does Nikki have that for herself? I don't know.
Right.
In the name of losing, to be denigrated, I don't, as a woman, I don't know if that's really fair. But since she stepped into this ring, and she's gonna have to take it full on. And I don't think she's dropping as of Tuesday, but I don't think that she is going to stay in the race. If the polls look like they look like now for South Carolina, I think before, like maybe a week before South Carolina, or a couple days before South Carolina, she'll just bow out.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that too. I was going to mention something about dignity. Oh, right. We saw who didn't have dignity. Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis couldn't even suspend his campaign and let his endorsement simmer for a few days. He endorsed Trump right away, and then to put a cherry on the little bitch sundae, then he delivered a pot shot at Nikki Haley in the process. I was just like, talking about no dignity. Like, where was his? Why couldn't he just suspend his campaign, pause his endorsement, and just bow out gracefully? Because Nikki Haley, to her credit, at least she said, well, I wish him luck in whatever he wants to do in the future. He ran a great campaign, but kept it classy. Like, where the hell was that with DeSantis?
He doesn't. He is Ted Cruz. I'm sorry. He's Ted Cruz. He has no dignity. I mean, Ted Cruz did the same thing, right? He bowed out and he was like, "Yeah, I'm endorsed." And then he waited like a couple. Then he ended up like doing the same thing, and then he's like, when Trump is in office, he's kissing his ass. Like, dude literally said your dad was, like, a whole conspiracy about your dad
Yep.
killing JFK. He talked
They
negatively about
people
your
were
wife.
producing photos of, like, him with Harry Oswald.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lee Harvey Oswald. Yeah. I
Oswald,
mean,
yeah.
this is the Republican Party in a nutshell, right? They know that they don't want to be on the losing team. So you go with a team that is actually going to, that you think is going to win. And Rubio did the same thing the other day. I mean, Ron DeSantis is the governor of his state. And he literally just said, F you, I'm going with Trump. I don't care about you, little stupid shoe lift wearing man. I
Yep.
am going to go with Trump because I know Trump will win. And the same thing with a lot of the people in Congress. They know who butters their bread. I mean, at the end of the day, this is what they're going to do. And it's kind of pathetic to watch them, grovel over Trump, who doesn't care about them. He never has cared about them. He uses
No,
them, and they don't care. They know it, but whatever.
they don't care. They really don't. But that is the state of the Republican. You know what? I don't want to end it with just everything bad that's happening on the Republican side. I think we should probably highlight like a success of the Biden-Harris administration because there
Sure.
are a lot of successes. Like for example, this week, the White House canceled $5 billion in student debt for 74,000 borrowers. That announcement makes the total loan forgiveness approved by the Biden-Harris administration almost to $140 billion for almost 4 million Americans.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden, the Biden-Harris administration has done everything it can after the Supreme Court reversed its student loan forgiveness program to
Yeah.
do everything it can within its power to forgive student loans to keep up with the campaign promise that Joe Biden made during the campaign season, and the administration is trying to do everything it can within their power post that Supreme Court decision to forgive student loans. It's just something amazing to see. And again, if we want to talk about doing mass student loans for everybody, then we have to go and replace we have to be the ones that are nominating the justices in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, that student loan thing really needs to be amplified, and I love the fact that they, like I said, went to that man's house and kind of talked to him and his family. One of the things he said in the video is that the fact that he got rid of his student loans, which I'm sure he was paying for many, many years, is that he can now build generational wealth for his children. And I thought that was a really powerful statement that he made in the news media, when they came to interview him. The other thing that I would say that the Biden Harris administration did this week, which I thought was fantastic and is in the works, is for the overdraft fees to be lessened, because guess what? We shouldn't have to pay $35 because we didn't have enough money in our account. I myself have done stupid things where I did it like a week before, where I paid my car bill out of my savings instead of my regular checking account, and obviously they paid it, but I would have had to pay a $35 fee because my account went into overdraft because I didn't have that money in that account. And so reducing it, like you said, somebody said reduce it to $3 versus $35 if you have Bank of America is a big deal, especially if you
Huge
have
deal.
recurring things coming out, you're broke and you got a whole bunch of stuff coming out, and one day you're freaking out like, oh my God, I'm gonna get charged $35. So reducing
Yep.
it to $3 is a really big deal. And when people say, well, the Biden administration is not doing things for us, reducing junk fees is a really big deal. I mean, even just transparency, like buying tickets to go to a football game, and I'm seeing the fees on one site, and this one site has all the fees included, and I'm like, holy crap, I didn't even realize these fees were hundreds of dollars. And so
Yep.
people weren't seeing that until the ends of the transaction. Like, holy crap, I'm paying, these tickets are $300 and I'm now paying $600 because of all these damn fees. So there's things that the Biden Harris administration is doing, and they're looking out for the, as we say, the little people. And we know Trump would never do that. He doesn't think about the little people or the people like us who, we may not, we're doing well, but these fees actually, they can add up and they do impact us. And yeah, somebody said renters fees. I mean, there's a lot of things that the Biden Harris administration is doing that a lot of people don't really recognize or know.
Hmm.
And I think it's up to us to kind of tell people what they are doing. And
Right.
maybe that's kind of the message going out of here is like, listen, we have a lot of work to do to be able to get people to understand what's going on, and it's upon us to do that because they're not going to watch TV or go to IG and follow the Biden Harris administration. Like, we have to just tell them what's going on.
Absolutely. And then to contrast that, when there are Trump supporters who always talk about the success of the Trump administration and how this went well for them or that went well for them, when Trump was operating as the executive or the commander in chief, any benefit that anyone saw was incidental to him gaining power or making money. It wasn't with the idea of making people's lives better. It just happened that, okay, this happened to work out for some people. So just with anything really, it was all incidental success on his way to gaining more of a power grab, more money in his pocket. That's just what it was with him. Oh, you know what? Can you stick around, Tiff? Because I have someone that wants to come up,
Okay.
and I think they're a Trump supporter. I'm not sure.
Oh boy.
So if you don't mind. Hey, Robert.
Hey.
Hello.
How are
Uh,
you? What's on your mind?
I was just listening to what you guys were talking about. Um, I think I come at it from a different perspective. I'm a Republican, but I mean, I'm glad to see Ron go. I think he's a joke. Um, I've never liked him since he announced. And now I think it's time for Nikki to start making some tough decisions as well.
Well, I think what me and you will agree on is that we both wanted Donald Trump to win the Republican primary. I don't want anyone else to win. I want him to be the Republican nominee every single election year until I die. That's just what it is for me. So I just wanted to put that out there, Robert.
Same. No, and there is one thing that I don't think you all consider when you say what you say in that regard is that there is something very powerful about having 100% name recognition, how you can pull that, how you can track that for a campaign. And when we say that like Nikki or these other contenders have a chance, they're doing so well in polling to Biden, it's to say that just as DeSantis, I mean, this guy was once the golden child, and so many others are and were. But if once you're then tried through the system and the of media and otherwise as the front runner, you get taken down a few pegs to say the least. Trump doesn't face that. It's already ongoing, has been ongoing. But these people. So when we say who has the best chance, Trump by far still, truly.
Yeah, well, I think it's obvious that Trump has the best chance. And so I guess my question to you is, do you care that Nikki Haley stays in the race through South Carolina? Does it really matter? Do you want to see her just go so Trump can start running the general election? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
I don't think it hurts either way because to be certain, even if like for South Carolina before or after she suspends her campaign, it's still at that point going to be a historically early nomination for Trump. So I don't care. I mean, it can go that long. Like it can, I don't, but I don't think she has a chance. And I do think what makes her so unattractive for even let's say like a future run is for me. I used to admire her a little bit more than now, and it's because I think she's a very disloyal individual.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people. So let's go there. Since you're talking about loyalty, right? So we have Ron DeSantis who endorsed obviously Trump today. We know that Vivek also did. We don't know what Nikki's gonna do. We know at some point she's gonna drop out and she probably will endorse Trump. So what are the thoughts from the MAGA side on who Trump picks for his VP? Because there are a lot of disloyal people out there, including Nikki.
You don't need loyalty in particular from your VP in that you just don't need them to unalive you, to be certain. But Um, I politically, and that is a joke. That was a joke.
No, I
Um,
make that joke all the time too. It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah. But with him, I think politically he has to have one thing, and that person has to help him in that way. And it's not a state this time, which is different. It's women. Whoever he picks has to help him with suburban women. They have right now that is his kind of weakest point, and if he can't make inroads with white suburban women, he won't win. He will not win. But
So
if he
are we
does,
thinking like Carrie Lake or Elise Stefanik?
I don't
Um,
think they appeal to those women. Not Carrie Lake, because white suburban women are the ones that are kind of the loudest talking point of that. They're sick of the drama. They don't want the chaos.
The Karens, yeah, we know they're loud. We get it.
Well, and so it goes to that person has to be in essence of something more stable, something to be weird. I was very shocked. I had a conversation with my mother who is a moderate. She's very moderate, almost you'd say a rhino. Some would call her my mother a rhino. But she told me that Vivek was what could do it for her, which surprised me because I didn't think that he would do well with women. I've not seen his internal polling, but possibly Vivek.
Do you think so? Well, that's interesting that your mom went with Vivek. I don't discount that Vivek could be, but I don't think that Trump, just knowing Trump, that he would pick someone like Vivek to be his predecessor in case something actually happened to him. And I don't know that other people would. I think he has to bring in obviously some evangelicals, like you said, suburban women. And there's also that thing about abortion that's probably not going to sit well with a lot of suburban white women that could potentially cross over back to Trump that went with Joe Biden. Oh, sorry, successor. Thank you. So what do you think? So do you think it will be a woman? Do you think, what do you, I obviously we're not talking state. You're right. I don't think he's going to pick someone based on winning states, but do you think he would pick someone like, let's say a Tim Scott, or do you think he would pick somebody that's, like you said, a woman that would bring in that vote?
Personally, I'm more to the side, I suppose, of what we all joke about, where I like the idea of a woman occupying it, and some Republicans kind of don't like the idea of pre-selecting that it has to be anyone really. But I do like that idea, but I don't think it has to be that for his selection either, and I don't think he'll pick based on that. I think it will be based in, I think, solely what demographic can help because he does need to pick up some key demographics because one of the things that Trump does that the Republican Party has been unwilling to do is he has broadened its umbrella. So like he might make a decision to bring in Vivek because polling tells him that you might be able to pull in enough young people, young Gen Z men demographically poll at 70% far right. So if those were activatable, there's a big thing for him. Or you could say, yeah, you could go directly towards the source of a more literal, a woman like Carrie Lake, but I don't think she'd play well with other women, to be certain. Um, so it just kind of depends, but I think he'll pick based on what could help him. And so, another example would be like gay people, gay men in particular. I'm gay. I'm gay myself, but
Me
gay
too,
men have
if you don't know.
done voted for him at rates that you wouldn't think gay men would. It's been kind of bizarre, actually.
Interesting. Well, that's an interesting perspective. I always thought he would pick Tim Scott, but then there's also the fact that he's black, but that's a whole different story. I'm not going to go there. But he does want to he has a goal, and so do the Republicans, of bringing more black people over to vote for the Republican Party. So that's why I always thought that he would maybe consider him. The Vivek part that you said about the young voters is very interesting. I never thought that Vivek would be someone that is appealing to young Republican voters, but his mouth actually does make sense why he would be someone that would appeal to that demographic. So thank you. I appreciate your perspective, because I didn't really think of it like that. People always think he's going to pick people have said that he would pick Nikki, but I'm like, I don't know about that, because she's been kind of, like you said, disloyal to him and kind of going at him. And Trump is not keen on people who are, talking negative about him. So I don't know. I don't think he's picking DeSantis. I don't think DeSantis would want that job anyway. He's actually in a more powerful position being the governor. And you said Carrie Lake, and she's running for Senate, which is a joke in itself, but that's a whole different story.
Well, a little bit about myself. I'm a Republican consultant and strategist. I know pretty much everyone we're talking about. I say personally, but I've worked with them in many different ways. So I have a lot of respect for everyone involved. But I think the Democrats have done a lot of what might happen to themselves, in my opinion. And that's where, if I was a Democrat strategist, I would tell Democrats that they've overplayed their hands, which that Republicans can as well. But I think politically, Democrats have put America in a corner that if he gets overwhelmingly elected, I think the Democrats have no further than themselves to look than as to how it came to be. And I think that this is where we have to start to say that Trump may have been the destabilizing factor that took America to this place where we have bluster on all sides, but both sides at this point have to bring it in, I think, or it never gets better.
Well, I think yeah, you're on mute, Tiff.
No, I said I think we'll see what happens, but definitely if Trump gets reelected, it is going to be the white voters who have in this country who will make that decision on whether or not Trump is the person that they want to be president, because we know that white voters are the demographic that determine elections. And yes, black voters are our base in the Democratic Party, and we need to turn them out. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump has a certain percentage of white voters for him to be elected, because the party that you guys have is very one-sided on that. And he did get the most turnout in 2020 for white voters, and they're going to have to come back to vote for him. But I don't know if they will, because it seems like, a lot of them have deceased, considering they had COVID, and the electorate is actually shrinking on that side. So we'll see what happens.
Well, thanks, Robert, for coming up. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
And thanks for not threatening our lives.
Oh, gosh. Okay. You too. Have a good one. Bye.
Well, that was civil.
We can have civil conversations with Republicans when they're not assholes,
Yeah, exactly. That's my only rule. Just don't be an asshole.
Now, if you want to get about it, we could definitely get back.
Oh yeah, we can get down if you want to get down. If you're bad, we can get bad. But someone had mentioned, let's talk about what it would mean if Democrats took both chambers of Congress, what it would mean for Joe Biden and Biden-Harris to get reelected. I mean, obviously, we saw what happened in the first 2 years of the Biden-Harris administration. Even though we had a tight Senate where if it was 50-50, Vice President Kamala Harris would have to come in as the president of the Senate and break those ties. But we were able to pass historic legislation with the infrastructure bill. I mean, within the first 100 days. How many executive orders did Joe Biden sign, reversing like a bunch of the stuff that Trump did? Do you know, Tiff, off the top of your head?
The first day, or like the first 100 days?
The first 100 days.
I don't know the amount, the exact number, but yeah, there was a lot. And the thing is, listen, we have to keep the house. We have to regain the House. This is not like we have an opportunity to do that. In terms of the Senate, the map is the map, and it's not an easy map to win. We know that Joe Manchin is retiring or whatever he's deciding to do. He's just not running again. And we know that's one. We have 51 now. There's really only two opportunities for us to make gains, and that's in Florida and in Texas, and those two states that historically we have issues winning in, right? So what will happen there? We have to keep all of our incumbents, with the exception of Joe Manchin, which would then lead us to be in a 50-50 Senate, which is where
Yep.
I think we're going to end up. But again, the 50-50 Senate doesn't mean anything if we don't have the presidency. Because guess what?
Exactly.
Another person will be the VP, would be the VP, and they would be the person that will split that tie. And in that case, that is one more motivation for us to win, right? If we think we're going to end up in a 50-50 Senate, then we damn sure better have a freaking VP who is a Democrat, so that we can still remain in power. And that is a big deal, especially when you have Clarence Thomas and Alito on the other side, who are upwards in age. And we know that the Supreme Court is actually on the ballot. So I hope people take that into consideration. Think about what that means, because it really is an important aspect of this election when you think in terms of the Senate. The House is the House. And like I said, we have a better opportunity there to win the House back, based on some redistricting that's going to happen with Supreme Court, some cases that are out there, or that have been out there, that have been settled. So I think we have an opportunity, but the Senate is really, really what my focus is on. And I hope that we can at least keep the seats that we have. And if it's 50-50, it's just 50-50.
Yep. And someone had mentioned if we can talk about the conflict between Israel and Hamas, if that's going to be an issue, if we can discuss. Well, I'll talk about it with respect to folks who are saying that they're going to not vote for Joe Biden. I don't know that I'm so worried about the noise that's being made on social media, because what I learned from 2016 and from 2020 is that, what the hell is that orange? Is that Twitter and TikTok are not real life. Like, these folks can yell at Starbucks baristas all day long to free Palestine. But the fact remains that if Joe Biden is not reelected, if Vice President Kamala Harris is not reelected, what's going to happen is the situation is going to get much worse. Just like what happened when George Bush took over. George Bush essentially helped put Hamas in power. He wanted Hamas in power over there, because it was the oh God, I forgot who was in power before. Why can't
He called for an election.
Yep.
And he wanted that. This story pisses me off. So basically, he said that there needs to be an election.
Yep.
What ended up happening is Hamas ended up winning that election, even though people advised him not to do that. And then what happens is the Hamas wins, and then the PA basically ends up losing power. And guess what happens next? The Hamas folks, terrorists, they go and they start killing the PA, who's actually in power in the West Bank now. But at that point, they were still kind of, trying to work things out. And they started putting people over buildings and starting throwing folks off stuff, because they're terrorists, guys. So that's kind of what happened. And George Bush just has a lot of hands in this, and Trump did nothing. Trump did absolutely nothing to fix the problem over there. So people need to get over their head.
And if you want to talk about Netanyahu being an authoritarian or very right wing, please know that if Donald Trump is allowed to take the White House, he is not going to do anything to stop Netanyahu from whatever he wants to do. He actually will probably encourage it. He will do anything and everything to help out another authoritarian person. That is just what it is. At least, Joe Biden is not the president of Israel. There's only so much he can do. He can discuss openly about their disagreements. But again, this is as close to a democracy as there is in the region. So it's in our best interest to make sure we have Israel as one of the strongest allies there. Because again, Iran isn't fucking around. They are funding Houthis. They are helping fund Hamas indirectly. And I mean, there is they are very self-interested in making sure that they succeed against Israel, and we have a vested interest in Israel. So understand that if Trump is elected, things will be a lot worse in the region. So for anyone that's thinking that they're going to withdraw their vote for Joe Biden because of this issue, understand that if you care about these folks so much, you're actually contributing to making their lives a lot worse if you opt not to vote for Joe Biden.
Not only that, okay, if we're keeping it real, Donald Trump will not help to rebuild in Gaza. He will not. Joe Biden is putting together a coalition of people who in the Arab world who are willing to be able to help. Of course, they have conditions that they want. One of them would be for the war to end before they help, right? I mean, that's obvious. They're not going to rebuild in Gaza for there to be another war 4 years later and all the work that they've done is torn down. But Trump does not care about Palestinians. So to think that Trump will say, okay, we're going to use American resources to help to pay for Gaza to be rebuilt is delusional. That is never going to happen. Trump could care less. He will say, you know what? I can promise you, if Trump was in office right now, there will be zero aid into Gaza because Trump doesn't care about that. He only, what is this slogan? Make America great again. He supposedly cares about America. He doesn't care about overseas. He acts like he cares about Israel. He really does. And what he cares about is actually the fact that Bibi Netanyahu stays in power because it helps him, because he's also right wing and also a radical, and that helps him in the region, right? But as somebody mentioned in the comments about Jerusalem being named the capital of Israel, and yes, that was on Trump. Trump did that. He did incite them with that bullshit, and people have very short memories on what happened during the Trump years, as though Trump did not give them funding. Like Trump was using the same agreement that Biden is using now had fund them each and every year to give them that $3.8 billion in defense funding. That is something that's been in place since 2016. So to think that Trump, and that agreement lasts until 2028. So Trump is going to continue to give them money because that is part of the agreement, unless Congress says no more money, and we know that's not going to happen. So I think it's delusional to think that anything different. If you care about Palestinians and you want a two-state solution, then Biden is kind of the person that you need to have in office, because Trump is going to be like, I don't give a shit about a two-state solution. When he did put together a package on two-state solution, you know how many Palestinians he talked to? Yeah, none.
Yep.
It was all him and Bibi talking about it. So he doesn't give a shit about Palestinians, and he's going to do whatever he wants. But there's a lot of instability, and Biden actually wants stability in that region. It's in our best interest to have stability. I don't know.
And if you think it can't get worse, just shake yourself from that thought, because it can always be so much worse. If you think this is the floor, it's not. Republicans are always so creative with coming up with a lower floor. That's just what they do.
Indeed, that's what they do. So I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, I just hope people come to the realization that, and I do think these protests are mostly anti-Democrat protests. Mm-hmm. They're not there to fight for the Palestinians or to have a ceasefire. It's all an excuse, and we've seen the way that they've kind of conducted themselves over the last couple of months, and it's right there. I mean, you can see who they're going after, and it's not Republicans. They haven't gone to Republican rallies, holiday events. They haven't gone, to their offices. They've gone specifically to Democrats because they think that they can influence Democrats to do something that they have no power to do, especially when they're talking to people like the DC mayor. Like, you need to say ceasefire. Like, what is she gonna do? She can't do anything. Like,
Shoot, the DC mayor has more power over the Middle East than a friggin' Starbucks barista. Like
right? Like,
they're screaming at
they're
Target
all
workers and baristas
yeah,
like
they're just the same. They're the same things. I mean, it's kind of just laughable when you think about the strategy that they have put into these protests, which is almost embarrassing. And people, want to compare it to, like civil rights. That is that is actually insulting
Yep.
on so many levels, because those protests were strategic and they did their best to be able to people to understand their message. I don't understand the message that is being conveyed in these protests other than just trying to be disruptive. And what's your goal? Like shutting down bridges and shutting down like just events and doing all these things, punching Black women in the
it's
face.
it's chaotic, and the strategy, whatever the message is, the strategy really plays into Republicans' hands, because Republicans love when folks are depressing Democratic turnout. This is something that Republicans rely on. What you will never hear a Republican say is, you know what, we should register more young voters. We should have way more polling locations. We should make mail-in ballots available for everyone. We should make Election Day a federal holiday so that everyone can vote. Turnout is their enemy. High turnout is their enemy. So when there are instances like this where there's high protests, when there's threats of not voting for Joe Biden, that is the only way Republicans can win, when there is this void of this sliver of support lacking. That's how they do it. They can only win by either turning back the clock or depressing Democratic turnout. That's the only way. So the fact that these folks are so quote unquote progressive that they're not realizing that they're playing right into a Republican voter strategy is mind-boggling, that they don't realize it, because this is not something that I'm coming up with. Republican think tanks have said this out loud, have given speeches that the more you depress turnout, the better it is for them.
Well, maybe that's the goal. Maybe deep down that is the goal for them, right? I mean, if you're going to protest Democrats, if you're going to, literally, they were in front of my senator's house, and they're at like 12 o'clock at night, like just ringing his doorbell. I mean, these people are just nasty. And the goal is, like you said, the goal is to depress turnout, but it is calculated. It is not just random. It is actually calculated, and we know who is behind it. I mean, you can follow the money and see who is behind the People's Forum and the PSL, whatever the hell it's called. These socialists that are doing this, the horseshoe is real. People don't want to admit it, but the horseshoe is real, and this is all a culmination of the Bernie Sanders foolishness that we have seen for many, many years. And these folks are anti-Democrat. Many of them are anti-Black. They are definitely anti-Semites. And there's just a lot of things that people don't understand in terms of intersectionality of how people actually interact, and what their intended goal isn't necessarily what they're putting out there. When I see people saying they want an antifada, or they want, they've kind of chilled with the river to the sea thing, but I've heard the American antifada. We want this. Come on. We know what that means. Like, you're not talking to stupid people. So it's kind of like, who are you trying to fool? Because you're not fooling me, but you are obviously fooling a generation of people who are younger, that don't really know know and understand what they're doing and how this can impact their future. Because what I'm seeing on, these college campuses and all these people that have been kicked out of school and all these different things, yeah, you may want a job one day and you may not get it because you were at a protest. And we're in an age where there's actually cameras and people can see you. And
Yep.
and I don't know if they recognize that, but I thought there was that one. It was like a study they did where they asked people, do you know what from the river to the sea meant, or do you even know what
Right.
river is, or the sea? And a lot of people didn't know what it was. And
Don't
then
know.
once they kind of understood what it meant, they were like, oh, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be saying that. So there's
Right.
a lot of misinformation that is being put out there, a lot of things that are people are just repeating that they don't really understand. And us older folks that have experienced kind of seeing the years of what Israel has gone through in terms of, fighting in the Middle East, they do have, obviously they do have the Iron Dome now, but they didn't always have that. And so I don't think people who are younger understand what it's like to turn on the TV and hear, breaking news, and you see people in gas masks in Israel, like I remember. They don't
Right.
remember that.
Yeah. Well, I hope that that addressed your question, Ray. Thank you so much for asking it. I'm glad we addressed it because yeah, that's pretty much where I stand. That's where Tiff stands, and I'm going to be doing a lot more of these lives, and Tiff is definitely going to be doing. We're going to be tag teaming these lives together because this live needs to get tag teamed. And yeah, leading up to election, I think it's super important to make sure that we unpack a lot of this Republican fuckery and a lot of the fuckery that comes from the fringe left, where they're encouraging folks not to vote because not voting is giving a vote to Trump, and it's not me saying it; that's Republicans saying it because they're hoping for that. But I want to say good night. And Tiff, did you have any parting words?
Yes, to the cowboy hater in the comments, just want you to know that I am always going to be a fan of the Cowboys, whether they're in it or out. I actually live in Baltimore, and go Ravens. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, thanks, Tiff. For anyone that's listening to the sound of my voice, if you're not following me, please follow me and please follow Tiff. I would greatly appreciate it. But again, thanks guys for liking the live, for engaging, for commenting, for giving the little gifts here and there. I really appreciate it, everyone. Hope you have a great start to your week and have a good night. Tiff, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, Kate, thank you so much for modding. Appreciate all you guys. Have a good night, everyone.